So it's 2020 and many events are canceled. Developer relations teams cannot travel, and that's making it impossible for them to find users for their API or services. And for HRO, it's even harder to get tech talent on board. For startup incubators and also accelerators, a lot of them are shutting down. And that's because we're all working online and from home. For many, the future looks super uncertain. So what if there was a silver bullet? What if virtual hackathons can help developer relations team, human resources, and also incubators? My name is Uchibeke, and today we'll be talking about organizing a distributed virtual hackathon. But before we do that, here's a little bit about me. I worked at improving database performance at IBM, then did digital ID work at the Royal Bank of Canada. I then moved on to Shopify, where I worked on foundational and experimental web components and tools. Currently, I'm working on a blockchain digital identity management system called VerifiedMe. So VerifiedMe is used by all of the major banks in Canada and also some organizations in the US. I've also published a few peer-reviewed papers and filed a patent. So back to hackathons. As you already know, hackathons are innovation marathons where people in tech come together to learn, to create, and also to validate ideas. Hackathons have always been a big part of my life. So as a student, I attended lots of hackathons, over 30 of them at Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, Waterloo, and many other places. And this made a difference for me and also in my career. So in 2018, I started thinking about a way to share this experience with people in Nigeria, where I'm originally from. So I founded NaijaHacks. So NaijaHacks became the biggest hackathon in Nigeria and the biggest in Africa in 2019. So I then decided that, let's create a program that allows anyone, anywhere in Africa to organize a hackathon, even people in remote parts of Africa or any part of the world. So that's how AfricaHacks was born. So today I'm happy to share how you can easily host or lead a hackathon of your own, because as you know, hackathons tend to cause the creation of startups like GroupMe, which was a hackathon idea that later sold to Skype for $80 million. While it's important to host hackathons, I truly believe that we should not just host hackathons for the sake of hosting them, right? Hackathons should be a place where we create new ideas or startups and products, a place where we find jobs, a place where we hire good tech talent. Hackathons should be a place where new products are tested with users. Hackathons should be impactful and should be hosted for the potential long-term impact that they will have. So far, we've talked about the impact of hackathons, but today, companies, especially developer relations teams, they are using hackathons to get their products or API in the hands of developers. So let's take Twilio for example. A long time ago, when I used to be part of attending hackathons, Twilio was always part of all the hackathons that I attended. So they attended those hackathons, provided their API for free, also sponsored some of the prizes. And because of that, a lot of developers know about Twilio. They use Twilio in their jobs today. And anytime they think about like using an SMS or a voice API, everyone thinks Twilio. And that's because they've been exposed to it at these hackathons. I truly believe that a lot of companies and a lot of startups that are building API today can replicate what Twilio did, so that in 3 to 5 years from now, when someone is thinking about using a product or an API that it's in the line of business that you're part of, they should be thinking about your API or your service. And this is why virtual hackathons are super important. And then for HR or for recruitment, hackathons can be a place to find top talent. And this is because participants at hackathons are super motivated. They are passionate developers and also beginners. And that's why lots of HR already sponsor in-person hackathons. In fact, I got my first internship from a hackathons. So if you're a developer, I highly recommend you attend as many virtual hackathons as possible because you might just find a job at this hackathon, right? And also, hackathons can be a place for startup creation and product creation and validation because it's a safe space. People, there's more room for error. You can make mistakes, you can try new experiments, and even if you fail, there's less risk. So like I mentioned before, there has been many companies founded at hackathons. Just last week, a hackathon project was one of the top rated new Android app on the Play Store. And this was just a product that was started at a hackathon in December 2019. So for developers, hackathons can help us to connect with opportunities and also help us to build cool stuff. For developer relations team, marketing teams, human resources, and also for companies, we can use hackathons to reach developers to create products quickly for the long term. So far, we've talked about the impact of hackathons. Now, let's talk about what's involved in putting together a hackathon, right? Because there are a lot of things that come into play when you're organizing a hackathon. And as a developer relations team, as someone in marketing, as a developer looking to get more users to use your API, your service, how do you organize a hackathon and get lots of people interested in it? So the first step, of course, is building a team. So you want to build a team of people that are so passionate about hackathons, that are passionate to build, to create something new, to try something new. And when you're doing this, when you've done this, the next thing you want to do is look into how people can apply. So how do people apply to this hackathon? How do you find sponsors? Which APIs should you be bringing on board for participants of these hackathons? And also think about the prizes. What should you do to incentivize users to participate in this your hackathon? So once you're done with the preliminary stage of planning the hackathon, the next phase is the hackathon itself. So when it's virtual, you want to start with a team formation session. I think this is super important because for a lot of hackathons, they expect that you've already have a team, but most people are just coming for the first time. So as an organizer, you want to be very supportive and have a session where people can network and pitch their ideas to potential teammates that will be interested in working on that idea with them. And once you're done with the team formation session, the next step will be the project development session. This is going to be part of the hackathon event. And at some hackathons, we have sponsors talk about their API or their services. Lastly, for most hackathons, this is where it ends, right? So after the demos and award presentation, everyone goes back home and returns to their normal lives. But should this be the case? Should this be where the hackathon ends? No, I truly believe that we can do better. Recall that I mentioned that hackathons should be impactful and they should be hosted for the potential long-term impact that they have. Right? A hackathon plan should include a long-term plan for sustaining potential breakout ideas. And although there are many post-hackathon things we can explore, I'll be focusing more on how we can transform hackathon ideas to startups, right? So how can we be more intentional about creating something meaningful from the hackathon project? First, the first recommendation I'll give is that we shouldn't assume that the winning teams of a hackathon are willing or able to convert their hackathon ideas to startups. No. So we learned this the hard way in 2018 when we assumed that all of the winning teams can just go through a startup creation process. That doesn't work, right? So what you want to do is to put out an open call for all of the participants at the hackathon, have them apply to join your post-hackathon program. I highly recommend you use the process that Y Combinator does. So they have a process for selecting startups that join their program. So follow that process, the YC process, and select the teams. Once you've selected the teams, work with them to transform their ideas into startups or into ventures within your organization. So again, commitment to hiring or growing your user base or developing new ideas should be essential for hackathons and also for organizers. So that's why I've been working on a model that helps transform hackathon ideas into startups. So here's how the process looks like. Starting with the dream stage, this the hackathon itself. This is where people come together to conceptualize and build ideas. It can be scrappy, it can be fast, there can be some issues with it, but as far as the idea is there and they're able to prove that they have what it takes to transform that idea into an MVP, that's fine. And then the second stage would be the start stage. This is post-hackathon. So this is where you teach the teams business skills, help them incorporate, help them develop a fully working MVP. And then at this stage, it's expected that about 50% of the teams would have dropped off from the program, right? So you then move them to the third phase, the fly phase. Even before the fly phase, the teams should have an MVP, a working MVP, and then a few of them will probably have some users already using their hackathon ideas, which at this stage, they are actually startups, right? So at the fly stage, this is where you want to help them actually start selling. They learn sales skills, marketing skills, public relations skills, and all of those stuff. And at the end of this phase, you will have hackathon ideas that actually have users that are using the product. And then you move on to the next stage. This is the ideas are validated, you have paying customers, and then at the last stage, that's where you help the teams raise to scale, right? So again, the dream stage, the hackathon stage, the start stage, where they learn business skills and build an MVP. The fly stage, that's where they learn marketing, sales, and other skills and get customers. And then the raise phase, that's where they raise money to scale their ideas. So for a hackathon to be successful, you definitely need tools, right? So if I'm organizing a hackathon, I need tools to make it successful, especially when it's virtual and everything is online. And it's even more challenging if you have people distributed in multiple geographies with different time zones, and also maybe you have people with poor internet connection, like in some parts of Africa or in some parts of South America. That's like additional challenge that you have to account for. So the first thing you want to consider is that hackathon projects need a home and an easy way to manage them. So I highly recommend using GitHub for the code and something like Linode. I know Linode is one of the sponsors of this event. Linode for hosting your projects. And then for a domain name service, you can use anyone for hosting the website of the hackathon idea. So because security is important and we're building for the long term, we want a scalable ID management and access control system. So I recommend verify.me because it's a great one that can be used at Hackathon and also for real world projects. It's been used by many banks in the US and also by banks in Canada. Almost all the banks in Canada use verify.me. And then for prizes, I highly discourage cash prizes. And this is because it takes away from the value of the hackathon. If you must give money, then this money should be put towards the solution realization process, right? So post-hackathon, if you want to help transform those hackathon ideas to companies, then this is where money can be put towards getting the tools that the teams need to scale their idea to companies. And then we also need mentors, right? So mentors are experienced developers or designers or product managers or other skills that are needed by the team. And these mentors help the teams to be successful at the hackathon event itself. So again, it's super important to use the right tool. And the right tool can be different depending on the audience and also the location. So for example, in one of the hackathons that we organized in Africa, we had to use bulk text messages to communicate with the users because most of them are not online 24/7. So we have to improvise and use that. So the right tool always wins, and it wins forever. The right tool is eternal. So now let's move on to the good stuff. What do you really need to organize a successful hackathon today? What are the things that a hackathon organizer or a hackathon lead needs to be successful to organize a hackathon. So the first thing is the team, right? So you need to build a solid team of passionate individuals that wants to make this hackathon successful, a team that can get shit done. So it's better to have a team that's a mix of tech and non-tech people. Now is the time where you want to bring that person that says they can handle the business side to your team, right? Because you need someone that can handle the business side of the hackathon. And then next, publicity and marketing. So you need people that can help with publicity and also for marketing, right? So because you might be doing something really cool, but if no one knows about it, then it's just futile. So I would recommend you get university students on board or student or developer groups on board. So in fact, you can even work with a group, a student group or a dev group to co-host the hackathon together, right? So it's your hackathon, you are leading it as an organization, but you get this group to help you with the planning of it. And then for registration, I strongly recommend you check out Quill. Quill is a hackathon registration system built at MIT. So it's built specifically for hackathon, and a lot of consideration went into building it. You can also use DevPost or even Eventbrite if you don't want to worry about working with something really specific. And then for judges, you need a diverse set of judges, right? So you want your set of judges to be representative of the audience, of the hackathon audience. You don't just want to pick one set of judges that doesn't represent the audience you're trying to attract. So you want to pick judges that know the business side, those in tech, and those in marketing, or even people in law. So you want to have that diverse group of judges to provide various experiences. And for communication tool, I think Slack is great, right? Because lots of people are already familiar with it and they already use it. So maybe there are other tools out there, but most hackathons I know use Slack. And then for video and communication, Zoom is a good one, but maybe you can try Hopin, which is what we're using now. And for judging, Gavel is a good hackathon judging app. So it was also developed by students at MIT. And a lot of thought went into designing the system, and it works very well for hackathon. Then you really need mentors. I can't stress this enough. All hackathons need good mentors. The approach that I've seen that works best is assigning mentors to teams, right? So a mentor can own one or more teams, and they are responsible for ensuring that the teams have what they get what they want to be what they need to be successful. So communicate with the mentors, and the mentors communicate with the team. And this is super important if you're going to have a hackathon that is over 3 days, right? For lots of hackathons that I've been part of or have organized, we always have mentors, and these have really been useful, especially with taking away the load from the organizing team. And then for demo day, for judging, I recommend you have 2 stages. So the first stage is the expo style demo. So how you want to do that is that you can use a combination of dev posts where the projects are submitted and the Gavel app. So judges can be anywhere in the world, right? They have an account on the Gavel app. The app points them to the project that they need to be looking at on their posts, and then they can provide their judging. So this is done by pairwise comparison, and it's easy. The app handles all of the worries for you. So I believe that we can make an impact with hackathons. So as dev leaders, as developers, as people in HR, as people in marketing, we can definitely use hackathons to make an impact for our companies, for people that are looking to get into tech, to get talent into our companies, to help us get developers to try our product, even with all of the lockdowns. So we can support virtual hackathons. We can organize, co-host, or be a lead sponsor at a hackathon, or we can partner with organizations that help with organizing hackathons, right? So if there's one thing I want you to take out from this session today, it is that hackathons should be an opportunity to create new products or new ideas. So hackathons should be a place where you can hire developers. And for developers, hackathons should be a place where you build cool stuff and where you have the potential to also meet potential employers if you're looking for something new. And I'm really hoping that this session inspires all of you to try to host a hackathon. It could be an internal hackathon. It could be one where you're trying to get more talent in the pipeline, where you're trying to get people from all around the world to try your product. It could be that you want to make an impact for a certain group of individuals to have a more balanced pipeline. Hackathons can be a place to do that. And I'm really hoping that we plan one soon. You plan one soon. And there's more resources online. And I'll be happy to share whatever. I'll be happy to share and answer any question that you want. Please leave questions and ask me anything in the link. So thank you. And I'm going to take questions now, please. Okay, yeah, great question. So how are we sequencing hackathons via these tools? Sure, so we've developed a system that makes it easy to combine all of these tools to host a hackathon. You can ask in the Twitter thread that I have in the link. I'm going to share that again. So you can ask that question there now. I'll be able to provide you with more pointed resources to help you with synchronizing all of the tools that I mentioned to be able to organize a hackathon with the click of a button. Yeah, so Matthias, you're asking about participating in hackathons. Yeah, so there are lots of hackathons out there. I would recommend checking out DevPost. So on DevPost, you can see available hackathons, and most of them at this point would be virtual. So devpost.com has some available hackathons. I'm going to share that with you now. It's devpost.com. Yeah, Boo. Yeah, thanks for that. So what key metrics do we use to measure hackathon success? That's a very great question. So what we do, we have a couple of key metrics, and for us, one of the most important metrics that we measure at our hackathons is the ratio of those that identify as male and those that identify as female, right? So we want a diverse set of participants. So even pre-hackathon, when we're pushing any hackathon, we're partnering with organizations that ensure that we're getting a representative number. So at the end of the hackathon, we look at it. And when we started in 2018 with our first hackathon, we got about 27% women. But in 2019, we got 35%. So that's one of the key metrics that we measure. The second metrics is the number of projects that were submitted at the hackathon, right? Because there are lots of hackathons out there, and if it's a long one, people tend to drop out of the hackathon, right? So we want to measure how effective the mentors are with helping their teams to submit a project, right? So most of the teams will be made up of 2 to 4 people. And for a 1,000% hackathon, we are looking at least about 200 or about 200 projects or so. Then if you're able to get that, then you should know that the hackathon was successful. So again, a balance. We're looking at the number of those identified as male and female. We're looking at the number of submitted projects. And then for the long term, we're looking at the number of startups that were created from the hackathon. So I'll give you an example. In December 2019, we had NaijaHacks 2019, which is the biggest in Africa. So far, 14 companies have been created from the hackathon. Right, so we're looking at all of those stuff too. So the number of startups that came out of this hackathon. We're also looking at the number of participants that attended this hackathon, and then finally, we're looking at the number of sponsors too, right? Because in 2018 we got about 30-something sponsors, but in 2019 we got over 50 sponsors, providing tools, API, and things like that to help make the hackathon a success. So again, a balance. We're looking at diversity. Second point is diversity, submitted projects, startups created, and we're also looking at sponsors. and also prizes. Okay. Have a good day, everyone.